thanks for joining me on Sarva Gunn Sampann. I have someone with me today who values integrity, grit, and compassion, and continually strives to enhance these qualities within herself. She's open-minded and lifelong learner. Please join me in welcoming Mrs. Adilakshmi Chintalapati to Sarva Gunn Sampann. Welcome to the show, Mrs. Adi. How are you?
I'm very well, Anu. Thank you very much. I'm delighted to be part of your program. I really appreciate this endeavor. I think it's a very, very important thing to recognize women for all that they do, their contribution, and the journeys that they take to reach where they reach. So, kudos to you for taking this on. And I've been watching some of the episodes so far and really appreciate the fact that you reached out to me and feel privileged to be part of this group of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for agreeing to be my guest. I'm really fortunate and lucky to be in association of some amazingly dynamic women who have accomplished so much. So I cannot wait to get started on the show. And our first segment is all about your childhood in Bachchpan.
So when we say Bachpan ke din, it reminds me of the Jagjit Singh song, wo kagaz ki kashti, wo barish ka pani. I had a lovely childhood. It was really wonderful. We were Fauji kids. My father was in the Air Force. He was a fighter pilot and then transitioned to helicopters. We were a small family of actually my brother and me initially, and then my sister came along after about 12 years. So we grew up in the north of India mostly, and that is where my father was posted. So we belong to Andhra Pradesh. My father was from Tenali, and my mother was from Nellore. Actually, they had traveled around, but basically closer to Chennai. And so this was a big move for her to come to Delhi and stay in the north. So there was that transition. But we grew up in camps when I was young. I remember we were at Palam and close to the airport, and there were the wars at that time, the 65 war and the 63 war. I remember those times and the excitement of having camp life. And I think that really designed the way in which we grew in terms of the resilience that we developed, the qualities of open-mindedness and tolerance. All of it came from the kind of lifestyle that as Fauji kids we would have. So that was the experience of moving from place to place. I must have changed some 7 schools or 8 schools within Delhi itself. We changed some schools. So from Palam initially, where we grew up, we then moved on to Arjungarh, which is actually near Gurgaon. It was a small camp at that time. And we would all get together in the evenings after school. Children would just come out and play in the park. When I think about it, the kind of creativity and innovation that would come out from these kind of playtimes in the evening, we just figure out something to do by ourselves, and we would play games like gilli danda and maran pittu and 7 stones and things like that. Very enjoyable. And in camp life, you have uh, the everyone knows each other, so you have the club and you have activities there. From Delhi, then we moved on to Chandigarh in this was way back in 68. We moved on to Chandigarh, and there we stayed in, and it was a new city. Chandigarh was a new city. It was beautiful. It was all well planned. So when we went there, we were exposed to the different sectors and the way everything was so beautifully laid out. My parents always liked to travel, and I think this was something that my mother enjoyed. So, whenever we were in any place, we would look at whatever is the nearest area that we could travel. So, we made a lot of these road trips.
Mm.
And in Chandigarh, we would travel. So the first thing my father did when we reached the city was take us around on a trip of the city. And there's a formula, for the sectors.
Mm.
So he showed us how we can find our way around. And and then said that, you can come back from school by yourself. You shouldn't get lost. Don't trouble your mother. And then he and he went off on a field area posting. So, this map reading, which I now realize that that was a wonderful skill that we would develop. I also remember a long road trip we made from Delhi. This was in 68. We drove from Delhi to Hyderabad, and it took us about 5 days. So I remember that my father getting the car all serviced. We had an old landmaster, getting the car serviced, and then sat us down with the map. And I must have been 8, and my brother must have been 7. And said that this is where we are starting, and this is where we are going, and these are all the points we will be going along. And that the whole excitement of that journey, had hold dolls placed in the car, and we had a carrier, and my mother would carry the gas stove and some raw food, because we didn't have all these hotels and restaurants along the way. We'd book into MES bungalows and bathe in the rivers. So it took us a week to reach from Delhi to Hyderabad, but we enjoyed that whole journey. And although we were a small nuclear family, we had lots of extended family. Like because my father came from a large family of about 10 brothers and sisters, and my mother also was 6 brothers and sisters. So we would enjoy these trips that we made to Hyderabad and Guntur and Tenali, and meet up with all our cousins and uncles and aunts, and that's how we developed very strong bonds with everybody. And I think that was also a part of uh, learning within the in the childhood. You learn about how to negotiate, how to interact with people, and develop those communication skills in different languages you're interacting. It also happened by traveling around in the country, meeting with different people, interacting with different cultures, and lots of learning. So there was, so that's what I think back, to the childhood that we had, the kind of opportunities we got, not just related to the schools we went, or to the education process, but just living life, and the opportunities that were there. Even in Chandigarh, we would go to the mall. There was this beautiful mall in Sector 17, and in the summer holidays, we started getting some storybooks to read, and would finish them very quickly. So then my mother said, "No, this is not going to work out. Let's go and get membership in the city library." And that was like, it's so wonderful. They had a beautiful library in the city, and my brother and I would like really devour books. We would read the Annette Blyton, Secret Seven, and also my mother would introduce us to a range of literature, because she was, in those times she had a bachelor's degree, and she was very proud of the fact that she had a Hindi Visharada, and so she would tell us stories at meal times. Sometimes Shakespeare stories, she would change them, simplify them, and then tell them to us. So the library was a great place for us. We really loved reading. And I remember my father early on got us this book by Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People, which was very impactful, and also a set of encyclopedia at home. So we were just about 10 or 11. And those ways in which we were given opportunities to enhance our understanding of the world. And then we learned skating, and would travel a lot from Chandigarh. We went to Shimla, Badrinath, all, the holiday trips by road. So traveling all over the country and meeting with different people. So we studied in the Kendriya Vidyalayas. Initially we started in the convents and then moved to the Kendriya Vidyalayas. And there you get a really good context of people from all over the country. So you're looking at someone from Bengal, someone from Bihar, someone from Orissa. So and then you learn to identify different languages. So this was some of the early years that we spent, and Chandigarh was beautiful. And we were there in the war, 1971 war. Again, I remember because my father was in Kashmir at that time. And we were there alone, my mother, my brother, and I. And the blackouts and the sirens, and actually, all the fear of what's going to happen. But we were excited because we were little children. So it was really wonderful. Till then, we moved to Ambala, and then my younger sister was born, and then in the next posting. We didn't have a school there in Bihar where my father was posted. So we stayed in Delhi in the hostel, which was again a great experience, of hostel life and living by yourself, and sometimes traveling alone. So we would have to travel back from Delhi to Bagdogra with, just a Jawan or someone would be sent, and we would have to negotiate that whole trip by ourselves. So it was really wonderful childhood with a wide range of experiences, and I think that freedom and flexibility that we got. So my parents were very particular about discipline, so that we should be always doing the right thing, and that was very deeply ingrained in us. Um, the integrity which I speak about, that being honest and being trying your best. My father would say, and he was very particular about being organized, and he would say, a place for everything and everything in its place, which has stayed with me for always. And my mother was always insistent about working hard and being true to what you're doing. But I think the great quality that they showed us was that, choose your own path. That they didn't force us to do things. One thing I really appreciate, which I now realize and I didn't know then, was there was no difference between me and my brother. As a girl and a boy, we were brought up equally, given equal opportunities. And he was not given anything specially since he was a boy. I was not treated any differently since I was a girl. And that was something that now I realize that in those days, it was something really special, that we were brought up to be equal. And I was given all the opportunities, whether it was skating or swimming or playing, traveling. Sometimes from school we would go on these excursions. Went to Dehradun, Mussoorie, and I know in some families they were scared to send the girls, and just the boys were sent on these excursions in those days. But my parents sent me, and I think that developed that spirit of adventure and the keenness to travel. I also know that the choices that I was making, because and that's another freedom that my parents gave us. That I know she would have wanted me to do medicine at that time. So my brother went into the engineering stream. But I said, I don't like medicine and I want to do home science. Um, And then very, very easily, my parents accepted my decision, and then allowed me to flourish in the area that I was most interested in. So yeah, so when I look at my childhood, I can really say that it was really a glorious time, very enriching, very fulfilling, and a very good foundation for life. I would say that our parents gave us roots and wings, which really enabled us to, draw our future and design our path ahead. Yeah.
Fascinating account of a simpler era gone by. We'll move on to the next phase in your life, and that is our segment Ye Kahaan Gaye Hum. This is all about your journey onward.
Yeah, so when I passed out of school in Delhi, like I told you, I wanted to pursue home science. And so, although, my father was in Udhampur at that time, so again, I had to come to a hostel. And so I came to Hyderabad and joined the College of Home Science here. I did my bachelor's in home science. And that was a really enjoyable program, because there was so much focus on personality development, on learning the processes, the wide range of subjects that we tackled, and I was especially interested in nutrition and food science. So that was my passion area. But we also had child development, which was also of interest for me. So I enjoyed that stint, and it was a totally different cultural experience. I came from the north, I came to Hyderabad at that time, and things were a little different here. My colleagues in the college were also slightly different, uh, but I enjoyed making those friendships. And again, staying in the hostel here, forming those bonds. And then I became, the class representative, and then the college president, because I found that I enjoyed getting into those leadership roles, right from there. So I taught my class in the BSc, and I was offered the ICR fellowship for my MSc. I was an ICR fellow, and I did my master's in nutrition and food science, and completed that. And yeah, then I didn't work immediately. I then got married after I completed my master's, and traditional South Indian family where parents think that, yeah, once you're 20, 21, especially in those days. So there was the arranged marriage that I had at that time, and that was another transition, another ye kahan aa gaye hum, because I moved from a nuclear small family to a joint family. My husband being the eldest, and a family of six brothers and sisters, slightly more conservative than we were, and all living together. But I think it's again that whole experience that I had with the extended family, and having lived with cousins and aunts and uncles. I enjoyed this experience of being with my in-laws. I didn't work initially as my children were growing. So the first 10 years, I was just bonding with the family at home, supporting the process. But what I did along the way was that, my husband had gone to a Montessori when he was young. So he found an advertisement, and he suggested that I do a training in Montessori. And then when my son was young, older one, so I have two boys. And when my younger son was also going to Montessori, I wanted to understand that better. So I went and joined the AMI Montessori course, and that was in the evenings. I did that for a year. I really enjoyed the early childhood education, and it really opened up my my vision of what is essential in the early years for children, how impactful that period is, what a difference it makes to the life of a child. That was a beautiful program. I actually, Mr. Swami was our instructor, and he was a student of Maria Montessori when she had lived in India. So we really got very good first-hand training from him. And so my son continued to go to the Montessori and then to primary school. And then I also did the Waldorf training, which is another method of education. So because I have the privilege of not having to work, I was exploring, developing skills and upskilling my knowledge. So I did the Waldorf training in early childhood education, and then after my second son was born, and he was about 2, then I started looking out for opportunities to go out and work. And also that I would time it because I wanted to enjoy every role. My role as a daughter-in-law, my role as a mother, my role as a professional. So I wanted to enjoy every role, and I think I had the privilege of being able to do that. So when my younger one was, going to preschool, I then I started going to an NGO because my professor, the head of the department at nutrition in college, asked me to help with an NGO which was called Mother and Child Care, and they had balwadis and anganwadis around the city of Hyderabad. So we would offer. So there was a nutritional program and educational program for that. So about 2 years, I did that, traveling around, the city, visiting these places. So it was a combination of my interest in education as well as nutrition. So I kept that going, and then after that, I had this opportunity to join as the faculty of a teacher training college, which was offering a program, a diploma in early childhood education. And so then they took me on as I became the head of the department, and I was the principal of that college, affiliated to Osmania University. But the students used to come only in the morning, so it was part-time for them. And so I was leading that college. We were training teachers for early childhood education, and that was another wonderful space, where I saw that there is this great need in developing capacity within the schools, because often many of these teachers don't understand child psychology. They're not aware of innovative practices, and schools just hire them. So we had this great opportunity to take on these young girls, train them in early childhood education, and they made very good teachers in schools. So I was with that organization for about 10 years as principal of this teacher training institute. So along the way, I also did my bachelor's in education. And then my master's in education. So I did a bachelor's, a B.Ed, and M.Ed because that was a requirement to be a principal of a teacher training college. And then I saw this. I was also along the side, because I was free in the afternoons. I would take some classes in nutrition, hygiene for students of hotel management. So in the mornings we had the teacher training institute running, and then in the afternoons I would teach students of hotel management, hygiene and sanitation, food science, and then even housekeeping. One of the principals in the hotel management college said that we need a housekeeping faculty. She sent me on an internship to the hotel here, Kakatiya, at that time. I did a 6-month internship, and then I started teaching housekeeping as well to the students. So I just think that, my whole bachelor's in home science, because we had all these subjects there, so it was easy to pick on. So it was a very broad based kind of training we got, but also the ability to understand processes and gain from them. So I did that, and then I found that around 2000, I found that the curriculum at the training institute was stagnating, and I really wanted to understand what's new in education. Where is it going? What are we preparing our children for in the future? And that's when I saw this advertisement of Oak Ridge International School, which was one of the first schools to be opened here in Hyderabad, and they were looking for a head of elementary. So I went for the interview. I got selected, and the school had just been launched, and it was the first such school, and they wanted to take on an international program, and they wanted to start the International Baccalaureate, the IB. So the IB is a curriculum, just like we have the CBSE and the Cambridge program. So the IB is delivered by the IBO, the International Baccalaureate Organization, and it was very new. I mean, there were no schools in India at that time. There were just no national schools. There was one American school in Bombay, and mostly most of them were offering the diploma program, which is the +2. None of them were offering the primary years program in the primary school. So that was something that we were looking to explore. So the management of the school wanted me to find out more about the IBO and see how we could establish this program at the school, the primary years program, or the PYP as it's called. So and the school Oak Ridge was looking at bringing technology at that time. This is the year 2001, where the concept was, the smart schools where there is technology. And that's what excited me about their project, because they had a seminar where they had invited guest speakers to speak about technology in education. And so they were, that was just the time that internet was coming into the city. And we had this whole Cyberabad, and, the city itself was going in that direction of becoming a hub for technology. So as a school, we were also exploring how technology can enhance learning, and using internet for learning in the classrooms, having computers, which is all very new for children. But we had, like, at home, I remember, like, my husband had bought a computer very early on, for the children to explore. And we had always tried to encourage them to use that technology. And so I was already attending some of these classes, the basic, it was called basic, logo, and things like that. And I already knew how to type. So in the school, when we started the program, we trained all our teachers, through an organization called SchoolNet, in the basics of computers, so that they would all be able to use this in the classrooms. And then I had to explore about the IB. So then I had to find out, do internet search. Where is this organization? So the regional office was in Singapore, and so it was very hard. So they were also not very well established at that time. So I got in touch with the regional manager, and then the management suggested that, to get a good idea of the program, it will be good for me to visit schools that are running the IB PYP program. And so I would write emails to schools in Thailand, Singapore, Australia, and just ask if I could visit the schools. So I did that. This is in 2002. I visited schools in Singapore, in Bangkok, Adelaide, Melbourne, to see how this program is being implemented. Attended workshops and trainings to understand the pedagogy of the IB PYP. And then, the manager was very interested to bring the program to India. So then we invited him to speak to our parents. So he came from Singapore, and then we launched this IB program at Oak Ridge, and then you have a 2 years implementation period. It's called candidacy, and then we got authorized. So we were one of the, I think, early IB PYP schools in the country. And then, because I was already a teacher trainer, the IB invited me to become a workshop leader for them, because that's how they function. That they train people from within different schools to then train other teachers across the region, as well as provide certification for schools. So I was the first Indian workshop leader for the IB PYP program. I was trained in Chiang Mai, Thailand, and those were initial days, when most of the people doing this program were Australians, New Zealanders, Britishers, Americans, Canadians, very few Asians. Because in the Asian schools itself, it would be expats who were the core teachers, since they had a deeper understanding of the pedagogy. So, and in India, I wanted to enhance this program and contextualize it. So the beautiful thing about the PYP is that it provides a framework, like a skeleton, and you can use that framework and work it around your own the context of your country and your national board, or whatever you want locally to also support. So that's what we did. That we took the CBSE, because that was our middle school, and we wove it around the IB primary years program. And then I would go on visits to different schools across the country on audit. It's a kind of audit process, where you're looking at how the school is doing before you authorize them. And in that process, I saw that, we really need to support our Indian schools. So I must have done about, I think it's more about 100 schools around this Asia Pacific region that I have visited. So far, I stopped counting after a time, but visited on workshops, on site visits. So I serve the IB as a consultant, as a reader, as a workshop leader, and site visitor. So I was doing this alongside growing Oak Ridge. So Oak Ridge, I was the head of elementary, and then after 8 years at the school, I became principal of the second campus. So then I started the second campus, and that was a K-12 school where I was the principal. And then I then took superannuation, and before that I was head of curriculum for the whole group. We had 5 schools across the country. So now I'm a freelance educational consultant. I'm on the board of a couple of schools. I advise them. And I enjoy mentoring, coaching leaders in schools. And I work for the IB. I support their program across the Asia Pacific region, lead workshops, do school visits, and consultations for them. So that's my journey.
We'll get into a little more about what you do, in your actual job on a regular basis. But that's a fantastic overview of where you've been. I mean, you've been a stellar student yourself. I believe you were in CBSE national rank holder, and then a gold medalist in your home science masters, and then you went on to get bachelor's in education, master's in education. So with all of that background, and then being someone who's at the forefront of shaping the educational curriculum for the young minds in India is an astounding responsibility, and you should be so proud to be at that in that position. Fantastic. We'll move on to our next segment, which is Kaam Ki Baat. And here,
Okay.
I'd love for you to talk about the work that you do at the grassroots level, that is directly working with schools and influencing policies and curriculum, and how it directly leads to learning and enrichment in a country like India.
Yeah. So I did realize the importance of this. Like I was telling you, when I made connections with my own childhood, and I saw that it was a lot to do with the skills that we developed. It was a lot to do with the opportunities to explore, and the also the freedom to fail. Sometimes make mistakes, learn from your mistakes, be creative, and then research in education is now showing how the skills are the most important part. So you have these 21st century skills that to be developed in all students. So there's creativity, there's collaboration, there's critical thinking, communication, and because now we know that the knowledge is constantly changing, and this is something that the pedagogy that I've been working with, looking at, has been supporting. So coming to that realization very early on in this transformation of education really helped me to bring that focus within parents. So I would spend a lot of time talking to parents, convincing them about how they should view education. Because in India, there's the whole shift, particularly from that very professional, technical kind of education of being either an engineer or a doctor, but moving on to other areas that children can explore. Yeah. So helping parents understand what are the needs of children, and how should we view this whole process of education. So essentially, it has been, that's my endeavor, and this is what I have been looking at, is transforming the mindsets of parents. And there has, we can see it quite consistently now, to move away from the traditional pathways of engineering, medicine. The STEM areas are important, but there's so much in that students can explore. And the fact that they need to develop skills. So even if you're looking at STEM, it's the skills that are more important than the content. So, and then we are seeing that more and more with technology now, with artificial intelligence that's coming into education, and all that it's that openness to learning, the ability to unlearn, relearn, and learn, the ability to continue to upskill and reskill yourself, which will keep you going throughout life. And that comes from a pedagogy of education that allows students to make informed choices. And how do they make those informed choices? They make those informed choices if they're exposed to an array of experiences. And that's what we need to provide them with. So, it's not a decision that we make at any point, but if we allow them to explore different options, then they know what they can do, cannot do, what they like, do not like, and then they make that informed choice. So that's something that I have, been trying to, explain to parents. I've been trying to encourage within the pedagogical approaches that schools take. And so it's a lot on the skills, the development of the skills. The other area that I work extensively is in mentoring teachers, working with teachers in the schools that I support, working with the leadership. I also find that, often experienced teachers become leaders. But then there's so much more to leading a school that you need to gain through the process of understanding the core aspects of leadership and educational leadership. And then because of my previous training in these areas, that's something that I mentor and coach leaders in dealing with situations, to plan ahead, to be organized, to enhance the experiential learning processes within the schools, and how to make it more meaningful for the children. So these are some of the areas that I work besides curriculum development, making sure that the curriculum is relevant and contextualized to what the students need in the current day.
Thank you so much for sharing those thoughts. What do you see as a challenge with the advancements in AI tools like ChatGPT? We're living in an age where technology seems to be overwhelmingly present in the kids' lives, right? We're beginning to see some of those skills that you probably gained early on in life erode because there's so much influence of technology. Do you see that as a real problem, or do you see that as an opportunity where in the coming years we're able to work around that and help students evolve some of those skills that you're talking about, which are critical to their development?
Yeah. So, I remember that when my children were young and there was television, it was called the idiot box. That, children would just sit in front of the television and keep watching, not thinking. So it would take away from that experience. We all know that, as technology evolves, there are changes that come about in every process, and so is the case with education. But the best thing is that we embrace the changes and the technology. Sure, it will have its pros and cons. We have to be aware of the pros and cons. We have to make our students also aware of the pros and cons, because everything comes with its own benefits and limitations. But then making, again, like I said, those informed choices, taking those right decisions. And I think it will really help us as teachers and as schools, to take away some of the routine things that we do in our classrooms as practice, and then make the experience more enriching. So we have to look at the benefits. And the same thing happened with internet. When internet came into our classrooms, and as the early adopters of that process, I know how much we had to struggle to convince parents that a screen is not a bad thing, and children are getting information from different platforms, and they're using it to research, they're using it to discover more. It's widening their horizons, it's opening up their perspectives, making them more global minded. And this was an opportunity that we took on. There was a lot of resistance initially to this, but we could see how much it has enhanced their learning. And then for everything you have academic honesty is something that we keep telling students about, and we have those guidelines, we have those policies for integrity. We say just because it's on the internet doesn't mean that it belongs to you, and it's yours to take and use it. So there are those guidelines that we give our students, and how technology has to be used, what is plagiarism, what is copyright, and what does that knowledge, who does that knowledge belong to. And the same is with artificial intelligence and ChatGPT. Is again, these will be tools that the more we resist them, the harder will be the barriers that we are creating within our systems, and students will find ways to maneuver around it. And the best thing would be is to embrace this, but also to understand the pros and cons. and then make sure that we are balancing those experiences in the classrooms.
You bring up a great point. I think the role of a teacher is also shifting from one that's just, throwing knowledge at the students, for a lack of better word, but more of, somebody that's integrating or influencing the core values. These days, kids are even asking a question, and this is like a complete reversal, right, from the resistance that you were talking about, the parents were showing as early adopters of internet era, where now the students are questioning, like, why do I need to even go to school? I can learn everything on YouTube. My son asks me that question. So I think that opens up room for teachers to actually innovate in that space and say, how can we create an experience in the classroom that students don't want to be online? They want to be in person.
Yeah. Which is again the same thing, because COVID has taught us that, where we swap the classroom. It's called flipped classroom, where the students, the basic material is given to the students. They read all of that at home, or they watch a PowerPoint presentation, or they watch a video. So they come to the classroom with that basic information, and in the classroom we are discussing. So that's where you can ask the deeper questions. You can develop the critical thinking skills, the communication skills, because now they're coming prepared with that information that it was available to them. They could read it at home, and they come and then they do this in the classroom. So it's called a flipped classroom, where you're doing the classwork in the home and the homework in the class. So you come and then you're using the peer group which is, you say that environment is the third teacher. So you're using the peer group for your learning, and you're actually debating, you're discussing, you're using those critical thinking skills. So I always tell parents that don't answer, if your children ask questions, don't think that you're an encyclopedia and need to answer those questions, and you need to have that information. So what I advise parents is that when your children ask you questions, don't think that you have to answer all their questions, their what, why, how, where, when kind of questions. Because you don't have to be the encyclopedia. You don't have to be that, repository of knowledge, giving all the answers to the children. But you have to say, let's find out together. Let's find out. Why do you think? Ask more questions. If a child asks you a question, ask another question, and like the 5 whys, and deepen their thinking. And then search for information together. Where can we get this information? Can we ask someone? We have, if the question is something about their teeth or about their body, okay, there's this doctor who's a cousin or a friend. Why don't we go and find out from that person who's the expert? Or why don't we read this book? Or why don't we look it up on the net, and do that finding together, so that the child also understands that this knowledge is available, there is this context, and there's a process of gathering that information, rather than just asking somebody and looking for answers. So skill building is very important, and going to the primary source and then acknowledging that source.
Thank you so much for answering those questions and sharing all that information. I want to move on to our next segment, which is the X Factor. Would love to know about aspects of your personality or any special talents and interests that you have that you are either inculcating or are thinking of focusing on, as time permits, but something that you that really uniquely identifies you.
Yeah. So I think, from what people have told me, is that I enjoy learning. So I think I'm a lifelong learner, and I like to learn new things, and also I like to take risks. And as if I look at my journey over the past years, I like to do new things, and in being courageous. When I say taking risks, is to be courageous and do new things. So that's something I really enjoy, and that's what has helped me along the way. And that's what I've tried to build in my children as well. So my 2 boys, also I tried to give them as many avenues as they could explore and make their own choices. When my younger son wanted to get into animation and game designing. I know that, coming from a family of engineers, engineer husband, father-in-law, brother, everyone, it was a new field for him to take on. But I encouraged that, and so did my husband, to pursue that. And that was also he made that choice because of the options that we gave earlier on. So I like to build that capacity around. And I enjoy painting. I enjoy the arts, and my mother would encourage that. She really encouraged my interest in art and would send me to these classes. So I would dabble in painting and the crafts and the arts, which I'm now taking up now that I have a little time. I'm coming back to that. And I also enjoy, traveling. So traveling and spending time with family, I love that. And I also enjoy traveling with family, traveling with friends. We have a group of friends from college, which is now like we've been friends for 40 years plus. And we make trips together. So we are a gang of 8 who stayed in the hostel. So we've made trips to the Andamans. We've gone to Pondicherry, Assam, recently to Puri and Bhubaneswar. So we have this yearly trips that we make. And whenever I go on a visit, because I've done a lot of visits in the Asia Pacific region, or even if I'm traveling in Europe or America, I like to add a few days to my work and then travel locally. So I do that, whether it's China, Japan, Singapore, Thailand, Indonesia, all over. I just like to add a few days for traveling. And I think that came from my parents, who took us on all these trips around the country, those travel, that love for travel, which I love to do. I really enjoy nature and visiting places, reading, watching movies. And now I'm going a little into understanding meditation and prayers, and a little of that is also something that is helping me. I'm exploring meditation, pranayam, and different forms of meditation, which I think is very important to stay balanced. I'm also very particular about eating healthy and staying fit, and so that's something which within my family I've tried to build. But yeah, so these are areas that I really like to focus on.
That's great. We were going to, talk about self-care, but looks like you have touched upon some of those, things with regards to meditation and nutrition and diet. But is there anything else that you do on a day-to-day basis, incorporate in your routine where that's your time?
I think my career decisions, because I am now a freelancer, and I think this was a good decision that I made, where I now can explore a range of avenues. I have time for myself. At the same time, I have time to continue working on the areas of my interest and passion. So I really don't find that need for my time, because it's an empty nest at the moment. The children have both grown up, gone. They have their own lives and they are working, and they visit us. My granddaughter was here. She's here in the city for a couple of days. But yeah, so that's really enjoyable. I love spending time with family. But yeah, I do a little bit of yoga and meditation in the morning as soon as I get up. But I think my day, I pace it in such a way that I'm enjoying what I'm doing. I think that's what's keeping me going, is that I'm doing things that I love to do. So I picked up knitting, which I had given up for some time. Then I knitted, scarves for the family, and crafts and things. So I find that that keeping that balance is very essential. And I'm trying to pace my life in such a way that I don't have to look for any free time or me time. I think I'm designing my whole day around something that I'm enjoying doing. Yeah, so I don't feel that pressure in any way. I'm enjoying everything that I'm doing. Yeah.
That's the way to live. There's just so much to learn from you. And I hope you don't slow down anytime soon, because you're such a fascinating personality, and there's is so much you can contribute to the education system in our country. And, before we wrap up, I'd love to hear some parting words from you to our audience.
Yeah. Yeah, I think my message to to parents or even people in the field of education would be that it's a calling, you know. So for me, teaching was a calling, and education was a calling, and it's a calling, it's a passion, and to continue to pursue it. And as we are bringing up our children, and for parents, is that enjoy the process of parenting. It's really a joyful experience to have, enjoy the whole process, learn along with your children, and give them opportunities to make mistakes, to learn from that, to take risks, to make informed choices, and to pursue their own passions. And uh, life will be a real joy in for everyone around. And yeah, so and even education is the same, that it's the whole process of learning how to learn, and that's the way to go.
Thank you so much for giving me this time and coming on the show. This is wealth of information, and I hope parents are paying attention. I hope everybody listens to this podcast, because it directly relates to the future of children of our country and across the globe. So I want to thank you so much for your time, and it is a pleasure and honor for me to have you on the show.
Pleasure is totally mine, Anu. Thank you very much for this wonderful opportunity, and kudos to you, and keep going strong on this. All the very best. God
Thank you
bless
so
you.
much.